Today, I'm going to show you how to make your games run better for free. Stay tuned. Wow, that's one dead chicken. Today, I'm going to show you how to make your games run better with a free and easy to use tool called MSI Afterburner. Most people know of this tool because you can use it to overclock your video card. However, I already did that before. Today, I'm going to show you how to use that tool to be able to, in real time, check your FPS within games. One of the hardest parts about making a game run good is knowing what each setting inside of your graphics settings actually does in relation to increasing your performance and at the same time affecting the look of the game. Sometimes the game can look ugly and still run horrible. However, other times, some settings you can change don't affect the look of the game at all, but heavily increase your performance. So today, I'm going to show you how to set up MSI Afterburner to be able to show your FPS in real time so you can make these changes and see how they affect the look of the game and see if it was worth disabling them or not. So without further ado, let's get onto the computer and I'll show you how to do it. All right, let's get into this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fire up MSI Afterburner here. This is a free program that's available from MSI. However, it works on all video cards. You don't have to have an MSI video card to use it, but I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description below so you can pick it up for yourself. Every gaming rig needs to have this program. Trust me, it's worth it. So this is the default UI. If you've changed the UI in MSI Afterburner, it might be a little bit different, so hopefully you can navigate your UI, but this is the one that should be the default UI if you download it, unless they change it and you're watching this video later on down the line. So first thing we're gonna do is hit this little gear icon here, and then from there it's going to open up the properties, and from the properties we want to click on the monitoring tab. So when we check that, these are going to be all the different aspects that we're going to be monitoring on the system, and what we want is we want to enable them in the OSD specifically. You select the specific subject that you want to monitor. I'm doing CPU usage, CPU temperature, GPU usage, and GPU temperature, as well as frame rate. If you wanted to add something, like for instance, let's add memory usage, what we would do is go down and we would check the little checkbox next to it in order to have the program start monitoring that specific aspect. And then from there, as you can see, it doesn't say in OSD. To get that, you want to go down into the settings here and check show in on-screen display. So we're going to go ahead and check that. We're going to hit apply, and then we're going to hit OK. And then from there, you want to make sure you don't close MSI Afterburner. It has to be running the entire time in order for you to see the OSD in the program. So what I would do is just minimize it. And from there, we're going to go ahead and fire up a game and see how it looks. I'm going to use Dirt Rally 2 here for testing. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this and let the game fire up. Now, the reason why I chose Dirt Rally 2 as the game we're going to use in this video has nothing to do with the game specifically, other than the fact that it allows me to change the settings in real time without restarting the game. I thought it would make for a better video. However, this method will work on any game you try it on. You just may have to restart the game in order for certain settings to take effect, and I thought that'd be kind of boring watching a game restart constantly. So we're gonna go ahead and get into Dirt Rally 2 right here, and I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so now that we're in the game, as you can see in the top corner right here, we have our frames per second, as well as our CPU, GPU, and memory usage, as well as temperature right here. All the things that we chose to be displayed in the OSD in the section below. And if we drive around in this game now, as you can see, we can track the frame rate in real time as we're using the game. And I'm getting pretty good frame rates right now at over 100 frames a second. And what we can do is we can try different things. We can kind of push the card to its limit here, get as many effects going as possible, and you can see the frame rate kind of drops down. I'm going to go ahead and go into this section over here where this dirt was thrown up. This seemed like it affected frame rate a lot. Okay, so we got all the way down to 91, looks like it was the lowest right there. So what I'm going to do now, oh, look at that, we got down to 87. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and hit escape. We're going to go into options, going to go into graphics, and then into advanced graphics settings. And from here, I'm set to ultra. The graphics are set to as high as physically possible. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and lower them to ultra low and go ahead and hit apply and then go back into the game. And now from here, you can see we're sitting here at about 250 frames a second. So if we drive around, you can see our frame rate stays pretty solid. I saw a 270 there for a minute. Oh, 300. Okay, so as you can see, we have easily tripled our frame rates by turning the graphics down here. However, as you can tell, the game looks really bad. The effects are horrible. It doesn't even look like the car is sitting on the ground. It looks like it's just floating over the ground. So there's definitely a happy medium that we can find here that will not only improve our performance, but at least make the game look good. So we're gonna go ahead and hit escape again. We're gonna go into options, back into graphics, and go into advanced graphics settings. I'm gonna turn this all the way back up to ultra, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play around with some of these settings instead of using a preset. So I'm gonna go down to texture detail. We're gonna turn that down. Let's turn that down to high. Reflections, we'll turn that down to high. Shadows, we'll turn that to high. And then night lighting, obviously, it's not nighttime, so that's not gonna really affect us right now. Ambient inclusion, we'll go ahead and turn that down a little bit, and let's turn particles down. So for the most part, we've turned everything down to high, but we've left a lot of the other things turned on. So we're gonna hit apply here. We're gonna exit out, back into the game. And as you can see, our frame rate right now is sitting at right around 150. So we're gonna drive around now. We're gonna see how it looks. And it definitely doesn't look as good as Ultra, but it's kind of hard to tell. But you can see our frame rate here is sitting in the 130s easily. It's solid in the 130s. It drops down a little bit depending on where you drive at. But remember, we were sitting around 80 in those sections. So that's still a pretty good boost in FPS where we were before. So as you can see from this, we got a huge FPS jump, and honestly, I don't see much of a difference in the game. Maybe you do, and if you do, point it out, but it definitely looks close to the same to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and exit again. We're gonna go into options, back into graphics, and back into advanced graphics, and I'm just gonna throw this thing back into ultra again, hit apply, and then exit out. And then we're gonna look again. And there is a little bit of a difference, mostly in the particles right here that are flying up. It looks like there's a lot more particles than there was before. And as you can see, our frame rate took a pretty big hit. However, even though this is definitely usable at this frame rate, if you have a lower end system or you don't have the same kind of hardware as I do, it might affect you a lot more. Like, I'm getting around 80 FPS at this point, and you might be getting more like 20 FPS. And if that's the case, it might be worth going through and turning some of these settings down to make it look a little bit better on your system. So as you can see, you can go through these settings and you can check each one, turn them down and tweak them until you get the best picture in gameplay itself and help your frame rate at the same time. Because who wants to sacrifice a good looking game if you're not going to get anything for it? So let's get back to it. All right, so what I'm going to try now is I'm going to go ahead and escape out of this. We're going to go back to options again, go into graphics. And then we're gonna play around with some of these. Like for instance, what we're gonna do is I'm going to turn down, let's turn down reflections all the way to low, and let's turn down shadows all the way to, let's just turn them off. All right, so we're gonna apply this here. We're gonna go back to the game. And now as you can see, we're sitting at about 126 frames a second. So we're gonna go ahead and drive around now. And this is another instance where definitely just turning those down really helped our frame rate, and it didn't affect the graphics too much. I mean, it is a little unrealistic having no shadow being cast by the car itself as it's moving around, but if you have a potato of a system, it might definitely be worth sacrificing a shadow just so you can play the game at a higher FPS. So we're gonna try another one here real quick. We're gonna go back into options, graphics, advanced graphics. We're gonna turn everything back up to ultra. And then we're gonna turn down, let's turn texture detail all the way down to low. And we'll hit apply, exit back out of it. And now as we're moving around here, you can see that the texture detail being on low hasn't affected the frame rate that much at all. but it has made the textures look a little bit more cartoony, so to speak. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. This may be livable depending on what kind of system you have and what kind of improvement you get from it. However, it really didn't help our frame rate at all, so it may not be worth turning texture detail down in this game. So that's essentially the whole idea behind this, is to be able to determine if you get any benefit for turning some of these settings down, because some of them, you really don't get much benefit. However, other ones, you get huge benefits. Like when I changed the texture detail down, really didn't help our FPS at all. But when I turned the shadows off, we got a huge jump in FPS. So in that situation, you might decide to kind of make a happy medium. Maybe instead of turning the shadows off, you just want to turn them down a little bit so they're not all the way up on ultra. That might help your FPS and be able to give you the great visual representation that the game has to begin with. Now, there are some games that this doesn't work very well in, and one of those games is CSGO. And unfortunately, what the developers of CSGO have done is they've blocked third-party apps from being able to run while the game is running, and that's because CSGO is a multiplayer game and they don't want people cheating. However, it still would be nice to be able to tell what FPS you're running, and I'm sure that an FPS counter really isn't going to be considered cheating. Well, I guess it might be, but I don't know by whose standard. But I wanted to use the CSGO in my benchmark, so I needed this program to work, and I found a way to get around their blocking of third-party apps. Let me show you how to do it. Okay, we're in CSGO now, and as you can see from here on the top left corner, we don't have any frame per second, even though MSI Afterburner is running. And the reason for that is because they've actually blocked it from being able to use it in this game. However, there is definitely a way to turn it on. So let me show you how to do that. In order to do that, we're gonna have to exit out of the game first. And then from here, we're gonna go into the settings from Steam. So go ahead and click this little gear icon here and click on Properties. And then from Properties, see where it says Launch Options right here? What we're gonna do is click on here and we're gonna type in dash allow underscore third underscore party underscore software. Okay, from there, all you have to do is type that in. We can go ahead and close this, and then I'm gonna fire the game back up, and I'll see you in the game. Okay, we're back in CSGO, and as you can see in the top corner here, it shows our FPS now, and we can use this to be able to test this game to see how well settings actually affect this game as well. However, what I would recommend on this one is you want to be careful with CSGO, because here's the thing. By turning on allow third-party software, you could run into problems if you play this online. Now, typically, I don't have MSI Afterburner on it when I'm playing against other people. I only do this in bot matches, and I haven't had any problems, and I've been using this for about 2 years to do benchmarks for this page, and it seems to be okay. However, don't blame me if you get banned from CSGO because they thought you were cheating, but I don't know how an FPS counter can be considered cheating. I don't know, maybe it gives you some kind of advantage. Who knows? Now, the next thing I want to look at is having an OSD is great. However, being able to customize it to look the way that you want it to look is even better. So for that, let me show you how to do it. Okay, so as long as MSI Afterburner is running, you should have this program here called Riva Tuner running. And go ahead and open that real quick. And this controls how the OSD actually looks on the screen itself. You can see down at the bottom right here, it gives you a sample of what the OSD looks like as it's running right here in the screen. And depending on how you want this to look, there's lots of different settings that you can change. You can even change the position of the OSD. If you want to move it over to the side like that, it's that easy. Also, if you have a game where it's hard to see, you can change some of the aspects to how the OSD looks to make it a little bit more contrasting to the game itself. For instance, you can display shadows or you can display a fill right here. So if we turn both of these off, as you can see, we essentially just have numbers sitting right on the screen. So sometimes it's nice to do the backfill in there just to kind of bring it away from the game to make it a little bit easier to see. And then I typically turn the shadows on too, even though when the backfill is on, the shadows are really pointless. And then also you can change the palette which the on-screen display uses. So if we click here, we can change some of the different colors. Like right now it's set to just its default orange. And we can also change some of the other colors like the background itself. So I'm going to go ahead and pick red right here. And now as you can see, the backfill is actually red instead of black. There's lots of different reasons why you would want to do this, but most of them are to make the OSD easier to see depending on your game. So if you have a game that has a really orange theme and your letters are orange, they may blend into the screen itself and it may make it really hard to see. So playing around with these settings in situations like that might help a lot too. Also, if you have a game where the top left corner where the OSD is normally situated is really important to the game itself, you might want to move the OSD over to the other side of the screen to make the game a little bit more playable while you have the OSD running. But either way, it allows you to change these settings to make them more fit the situation which you currently find yourself in. Now the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to take these numbers and make them a little bit more usable, because it's nice to be able to see your FPS. However, it's even better to be able to do a real benchmark inside of a game so you can see how different changes affect the game and be able to record that in real time. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, so we need to jump back into MSI Afterburner here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this little cog, but this time instead of the monitoring, we're going to look at benchmark. So we're going to go ahead and click on the benchmark tab, and there's 3 settings we want to change right here. We want to change how to begin recording, how to end recording, and where to save the results after you're done. And essentially all this is a hotkey to actually start the recording. I use F11 and F12. However, the only downside with F12 is that takes a screenshot in Steam. So I have about 1,000 screenshots from every time I ran a benchmark. However, it doesn't really make a difference. You can use whatever keys you want to start the benchmark and to end the benchmark. You just want to make sure that those hotkeys don't conflict with something in the game itself. And then the next thing you want to do is tell it where to save the benchmark results. If you leave this default, it saves them in a real obscure place where the program is installed, and it's kind of annoying trying to find them. So I would recommend putting this in a place where it's really easy for you to find so you can refer to it later. I use mine inside of my documents folder. That's a really good place for it. So once you set these settings up, you go ahead and hit OK, and we got to fire up a game now and play around with it. And for that, I'm going to use Car Mechanic Simulator 2001, primarily because I'm absolutely obsessed with this game right now. And if you're a car guy, I would highly recommend getting this game. It's a really good game. And I've so far spent hours playing this game. And, it's worth it, trust me. Okay, so now the game is loaded. We're sitting here in my shop right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit F11 to start the benchmark and then F12 to stop it. So I'm going to go ahead and start this benchmark right now. So we're going to hit F11 and we're going to walk across the shop. So essentially all we're doing right now is we're kind of getting a track that we can run repeatedly, because that's what's important when you're doing benchmarks, is you want to be able to run the same track each time so that the benchmark results have some meaning behind them. So once we walk to the end right here, I'm going to go ahead and turn around for where we started, and then we're going to hit F12 in order to stop the benchmark. And as you can see in the bottom right corner, I just took a screenshot. So now what we need to do is we need to make a change so we can have that reflected in the benchmark. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and hit Escape. We're going to go into settings here. And right now the graphics quality is set to Ultra. I'm just going to crank this all the way down to low. We're going to go ahead and hit Save. And then we're going to exit back into the game. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and hit F11 again to start our benchmark. And we're going to walk exactly the same track that we walked last time. And the reason why you want to do the exact same track is because you want the benchmark results to be consistent. You definitely don't want to do random things inside the game, because unfortunately different aspects of a game will show different frame per second. So you may get different benchmark results without changing any settings at all. So now we get to the end right here. We're gonna go ahead and hit F12 to stop our benchmark. And now we're gonna exit out of the game in order to see what our benchmark results were like. Okay, so now that we're back to our desktop here, I'm gonna go ahead and open up File Explorer. We're gonna click on Documents, and we're gonna go into Benchmark, and we're gonna go into our benchmark text right here. Okay, so this will show us both times we ran the benchmark, and as you can see, our average frame rate in the first run was 72.8, while our average frame rate in the second run was 110.9. And you can also see here our minimum and maximum frame rates, as well as our 1% and our 0.1% low. So this should give you a really good idea of how the changes you made affected the game. Like in our instance, it obviously helped a lot by turning the graphics all the way down on low. But if you went down and just made slight adjustments to the game, you could see what those changes actually represented with hard numbers. Just make sure that when you're doing these benchmarks, you do the same thing each time. And I know that's difficult in some games, but it is definitely a necessity. You want to do the same path in each game because as you saw in Dirt Rally 2, our frame rate would change based on where we were on the map. So if we did random things different times, our benchmark results really wouldn't have much meaning behind them. You want to try to follow the same path each time you're doing a benchmark so your benchmark results can be consistent. But hopefully these tips and these methods will help you to make your gameplay not only look better, but run better as well. But hopefully this video was helpful to you, and if it was, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell icon so you can be notified of future videos. I post a new video every week. Oh, and hey, before you go, check out a couple of these videos. Have a great day.